Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. We've got a super interesting guest and topic today. We're going to be talking about becoming the leading customer authority in your business and why that's important. Why should we be talking about that? And to help us in that discussion is Claire Hartley. Now, Claire, you are a three-time B2B CMO. Your background, we don't have to say exactly how many years, but more than 2 decades in the business. You've been on both the agency side in the last 10 plus years. You've been on the side where you're actually been a CMO and working inside of a B2B organization. So you've got a lot to say on this subject, but before we get started, maybe expand a little bit more on your background so that we know.
Hi, thank you, Steve. Hello, listeners. Lovely to meet you today, and I hope you enjoy the content of our discussion. I have been working marketing for probably over 25 years now, and I've luckily had a broad range of experience. I have worked within agencies, and I've also worked client side. I have started working in traditional marketing and moved to direct marketing, where I became very data centric. I then worked in different parts of, I'd say, advertising, then digital based marketing. And what it's done is given me a really strong, broad and deep experience across many different sizes, sectors, and just bringing and driving comprehensive business success. Because what I think is absolutely critical to any marketing focused business is understanding our customers and using those insights to carry out successful growth strategies. And I've been doing that consistently, delivering 5 times return on marketing spend in the past few decades.
Right. Well, what I want to do is I want to get your point of view kind of right away and set the groundwork for why is it so important that we understand our customers in order to accomplish all those things you were talking about our go-to-market strategy?
Absolutely. So truly knowing your customers. Customers are interesting bunches of people. Now, whether you've got your B2B customers or your customers that focus within the consumer side, we're still all people at the end of the day. But I think what you find quite difficult, what companies find quite difficult, although they might have a great data strategy, they've got great data quality, what you will find is, and in my experiences, truly understanding them and understanding what their needs are, what their wants are, what they actually care about, and even when they don't say it, is something that would serve businesses better. So we serve them better in the places where they are. So what I am passionate about is helping customers understand that it's not just about the transaction data, it's about understanding people truly and making sure that you leverage that appropriately for the business goals that you set in place.
And, to underscore the importance of this, in the last couple of years, both Gartner and McKinsey and others have come out and talked about how the number one competitive advantage for businesses today is the experience that you create for your customers and your prospects. Mm-hmm. That experience, and it makes sense, right? Because in today's rapid technological innovation and even ChatGPT, writing code, you're not going to create product differentiation that's lasting. You're not going to be the low price leader. We all have 10, 20 different customers minimally that or competitors that we're up against. And so it's not price, it's not product or service, it's the actual experience that we create. So if that's the number one competitive advantage for all businesses, then we better really know our customers in order to create that kind of an experience. And you said something that was really interesting. You said, even what they don't tell you, like, how do we know them? How do we get to have such an organic level of understanding of our customers, even if there's things they don't tell us? Because we can listen to, gong calls all day on sales conversations, but there's that shield that's up in between a sales conversation where they're guarded, right? They're not going to open up and tell us absolutely everything. So how do we really deeply understand our customers?
And that's a really hard call for many businesses, because I think I read a 2023 Salesforce survey, and they said that 73% of their customers expect the companies to understand their unique needs and their expectations, but they actually cited 42% of companies say they have a complete unified view of their customer data. But in my experience, we may have customer data that's up to date, but not a good understanding of motives and intentions. And that, Steve, is getting to your point of really understanding your customers. So there's lots of different types of customer data out there, but I think one of the key things that's really important is understanding a profile of our customer. So we're not talking about segmentation at the moment, it's the profile of our customer. So one of the things that is widely used across many types of businesses are IDA customer profiles. And that's great for helping us identify our best customers, at a broader level. But one of the things that many companies don't do is delve deeper into something called customer avatars, and they go into the person characteristics and the motives of those individual buyers within those ideal customer segments. So ICPs they have information such as who they are, what they do, what they fear, and what they dream of. And of course, you're going to have individual demographic, psychographic, all of those types of information. And for businesses, you'll have things like demographic or growth rates. But what avatars will give you, and this is quite important here, is a before and after state. Many companies don't think of the customers before their interactions, their engagement, and their relationship, and then after them. And what that means is they don't understand what they feel, what they think, what they need, and actually the negatives and the positives of those states, and also what the peer influences may be in that. And it can actually then work out into their work life, but also home-based scenarios as well. And it gives you a really broader general understanding of your customers, demographics, interests, of course, frustrations, fears, of course. Key purchasing drivers is a critical one, which we don't understand or have enough depth of information in. Also, their wants and aspirations. So irrespective of the format that you use, there are a number of breakthrough moments that will be really helpful in understanding our customers. I can share some of those if that might help, Steve.
I think that would be great. And any kind of stories that you have in terms of, collecting this information and using this information and how it's helped would be fantastic too.
Yeah. So I think, as I've said, irrespective of the format, I think the breakthrough moments would be by understanding a few key things. So what I will say one of the first and the most critical is understanding the pure problems and actually the status of those problems. So is it painful, urgent, recognized, expensive? And then secondly, why they're having these problems. So how's it influencing their buying triggers? Is it rational? Is it emotional? Are they actually solving those problems? Is it fulfilling a need? Or is it actually chasing an outcome? And then the third critical point in this is actually learning how they buy. So I think understanding the buying stage is quite critical. Understanding who the decision makers are, who the champions are, and what's actually on their buying checklist. So there's kind of the examples of the things that I would look at. In my experience that I've done a range of different types of customer understanding and creation of these avatars. But where we got the most value out of them is actually in an organization that I worked in about 5 or so years ago, where we were looking at taking a B2B product and moving it into the B2C marketplace. It was a business decision that was taken quite quickly, and the turnaround had to be quite quick. And this is what happens to us all in marketing, which I'm sure any of the listeners will totally understand here. But one of the key things that we had to look at was how the core product that we were taking to market would be beneficial to people in the home. So we did a lot of deep dives into understanding our customers. And by doing that, we did it on a two-pronged approach. One, we did data mining and historical analysis, which for a B2B business was quite interesting because we understood the levers and decision-making around why people were buying the products. But from a B2C perspective, what we needed to look at was probably what I call ecosystem mapping. So what we were looking at is the relationships between the market. So understanding the landscape, the opportunities, and the associated risk, and then spending quite a lot of time with end customers doing focus groups, doing polls, doing one-to-one feedback sessions over I think it was a 3, 6, and then over a 12-month period of time, just really deep dive and to understand how our product would be relevant for market, how our messaging would resonate, and how we would then drive and then create content and assets from a marketing perspective, and also focus on our sales messaging to make sure that everything that we were doing was relevant to the needs and the benefits of the product based on what the customers were looking for. Does that give you enough information, Steve?
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that we're clearly articulating this, is that you went and you talked to prospects and customers throughout the buying journey at different segments of time and post purchase as well, to understand how, how they were thinking, what their challenges were, and then all the way through, after using the product, how did they feel about that, and what did you learn?
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
Yeah, here's what I love about that, is one of the things that we have to do, like you said at the beginning, we have to understand their core problems very, very deeply. But a big part of that is we are constantly reframing their problems and their challenges to be more important than maybe they actually have given, kind of a cognitive level, why they're this important. Because lots of times we're selling solutions to problems that people don't know how to solve. So they've just been living with it for a while, and you get used to living with it. So therefore, it's not as high a priority as it should be. And we have to paint the picture. It's like, well, if you live with this problem, then here's all the ways that it impacts you or impacts the organization. So understanding that, how to reframe that problem, not just understand it, but reframe that problem, is really important. And getting all this information and the one-on-ones and the focus groups and the data throughout that cycle, I would imagine would give you tremendous opportunity to do that, as well as just understand their language, how they see the problem, from what perspectives, how it impacted them. I love what you're doing there.
Yes, exactly. And I think the key takeaway from that point specifically for me is that customers change. They change their minds. The biggest challenge I think marketers have at the moment is actually making sure that we understand that change of need, requirement, and behavior, and track that appropriately. I mean, the days now we've obviously got fast tracking of technology. We've got AI. We have different kinds of learning available to us. We have different platforms available to us. Is how we capture that and bring it into one place and then drive the insights from that, those actionable insights. And that's probably the hardest challenge, I would say, CMOs and kind of marketing organizations or marketing-led organizations have currently, is focusing on those areas. And there's different techniques that we can do to make sure that we're looking at that over time. I think we need to always make sure that we are within legal boundaries of any of the information we're collecting, obviously. But there's techniques we can ensure that we have, whether it's clustering or clarification association, making sure we have the right statistical analysis software. There's data visualization tools there, for example, Power BI or Tableau, and making sure we have the right CRM. But one of the things that businesses don't do is that although marketing holds the data, many businesses don't seem to realize that customers and customer experience, customer data is actually the role of the C-suite, but the C-suite is responsible for the driving the success and the growth of the business. but it's everybody in that organization's responsibility to make sure that we have our customer data. Now, for example, marketing might have certain requirements around the certain data so that we can understand their needs, their wants, so we can have the right messaging, the right propositions. Product team, for example, might want to make sure that we understand what attributes they might want within it or within a service. And then you have the sales team that want to understand what their specific needs are that will help them move them down the path to purchase. But the challenge area here is ensuring that all of the departments within the business are very clear about the goals, what they're expecting from their data and their data strategy, align those KPIs around that, and then ensuring that whatever system you're using or CRM you're gathering that data from, you actually have a joined up view of your customers, and then you can manage that data to ensure that it's then actionable for each of the different departments within the business. So as I said, it does tend to feel like it falls to marketing in many instances, but it shouldn't do. It should fall across the business.
Tell me a little bit about the balance of importance of all this research that you're talking about, you do. And you just got through talking about the data and managing the data and understanding the trends in the data. You also talked earlier about focus groups and one-on-ones. Can you tell me a little bit about the relative importance of both sides? Yeah, I'll talk to many CMOs on this podcast, and they'll say one of the first things we do, when we start a new position is we'll talk to 20, 30 different customers, right? We'll have one-on-one conversations. So what I was trying to understand is within this research, how important is both sides of the table there? Looking at the data and then the one-on-ones or the FaceTime, the focus groups that you have with people.
Absolutely. So we've talked about kind of the data up front. We've talked about data mining. We talked about analysis. We talked about ecosystem mapping. What we haven't talked about is those in-depth customer conversations. And again, there are many ways to do that. You can use, your social listening tools. You can do polls. You can do those types of things. But from my experience, those are absolutely critical to understand a general flavor for what's going on across your customer base. But it cannot at any point ensure that you don't have your one-to-one conversations with your customers. So that is absolutely critical across what you do. You need to make sure that you have the right setup in place. And I'll give you some examples. In the company I was talking about a little bit earlier, so I'm keeping the same example all the way through, so it makes sense. When we were looking at kind of taking that new product to market, one of the things that we did do is ensure that we had the right level of customer interactions to ensure that we stayed relevant within our customer process. So the marketing team would ask them a range of questions around more marketing focus, aspirations, needs. And we would then get the sales team to work with them to then understand more kind of buying and more pain-based triggers and the demand-based triggers to bring all that information together. Then what we would do is we would then do from the one-to-ones after the initial conversation, we would then build in time-sensitive activity with the customers over different time periods, whether that was a month, 3 months, 6 months, and then we would move it into what I call life cycle-based discussions with customers, where once they understood your product, what you intend to do, the need for them to kind of keep buying from you may be reduced in a B2B scenario. And so what you would then do is shift the type of information, questions you were asking at that 6, 12-month, and 24 period. And then it becomes more focused on life cycle-based questions and queries to understand how your product stays relevant to those customers, how their situation has changed, and what those triggers and those challenges are. So I would say that you absolutely follow the process of the typical NPS scoring, the typical surveys you would send out, but ensure that you have one-to-one or at least focus groups with customers at a specific time period relevant to the business to ensure you're getting that one-to-one insights that are relevant. One of the key takeaways that I learned after 2 or 3 sessions of one-to-one and very small intimate focus groups is the need for transparency and honesty. Customers will feedback, but they want to understand that what the information they are giving you and the time they are investing into your company, your organization, or your product will have significant benefits. And then they will see that then coming into your work streams. And it's a real requirement to keep the customers happy that they start to see those changes implemented. Now, the timescale of those changes may be dependent on your business or the type of product that you're offering or the service you're offering, but keeping transparent and showing that you're acting on those customer insights and those requirements is absolutely critical to ensure that you retain your customers over a period of time. And it's that critical activity that ensured the longevity and the strength of the organization over time to maintain and grow.
So you've mentioned a number of times in here, and we're talking about B2B organizations understanding lifestyle. You said what they feel, what they want, and what they need.
Yes.
These feelings, right? We can think in a B2B world, right, that it's a very rational decision that we're making, right? And so it's like, here's the kicking the tire list that they need to know in order to make their decisions, right? Tell me when you put what they feel as the number one thing that you said that we need to understand, what does that mean to you, especially in the context of B2B marketing and sales?
Okay, so that's it. So I think what they feel, this is important when I mentioned earlier the benefit of the avatar. So I think understanding how they felt before they interact with your organization or your product or your service to afterwards. So what you really want to do is understand is what is the material benefit being of working with your organizations or procuring from your organization. And that can be fulfilled by asking, some of it comes around kind of customer satisfaction, product need fit. Is that fitting their needs? Hasn't it given them what they need? Was it done in a timely process? Was the price point specific? And when you keep your questioning very specific, very, very direct, but respectful, you should probably be given the insights that you need, which will help you understand exactly what customers feel about what you have done and whether it's relevant to them and will be consistently relevant to them moving forward.
Can't we just get this information by listening to recordings on sales conversations?
You can, of course you can, but it's whether it's going to give you. But the problem that you will have is that the needs that you're going to be hearing, or those specific needs, you're going to have to listen to a certain volume of them, because what you don't want to do is go down what I'd call a rabbit hole. So what you don't want to do is the business to react on one specific customer who may be particularly disgruntled about your product, your service, or what you're offering, or your service that you've provided them. It's critical that you listen to them, but what you need to do is build over time an understanding of more than just that one point. What you want to do is you want to be able to pivot and change as a company, but don't be driven by one specific customer comment. So what you have to do is, in these cases, is understand a certain amount of data and understand those commonalities to be able to then pivot and change quickly. Unless it's something that's really bad, the business needs to change immediately, which would be taken to the CEO or the C-suite to kind of action on that and support that decision. But ultimately, it's about building that information over time and not rabbit holing on one comment specifically.
And I just love too that was a little bit of a loaded question, right? Because these one-on-one conversations that you're having, you're talking about in the focus groups, they're unencumbered by a sales conversation, right? So they're not guarded. There's not that shield up. I'm being sold to, so therefore there's only so much I'm going to say. There's a bit of a dance there, right? So it's an open, honest, and authentic environment for learning. And so I love the way that you've set all this up. So you have it here, and in one of our previous conversations, you talked about the importance of differentiation in marketing. With everything that you're learning here, how do you take that and put it into a brand, sales enablement materials, demand gen campaigns, right? Like, how does this now translate into the actions and activities of the organization and their go-to-market strategy?
Well, exactly. And Steve, that can be actually some of the hardest bit to do. It's simple to do, but actually the hardest bit to do. I think the first thing I would say is focus in on the simplicity. Take what you understand and make it simple for people to understand. Understand what the core requirement is from the customers and turn that into your messaging. So if what you're trying to do is demystify any complexity, people are time poor. They want to understand critically what you can do for them quickly and easily. So all of the data you're capturing, what you'll start to do is map it into types or messaging. And then you need to check with your sales team, the product team, the marketing team, and make sure that that message rings true. And you probably also test it back with those customers that you spoke to initially to see if this is what you've shared with us, this is what we're hearing from lookalike customers and prospects. What do we try to change this? What do you think about it? So I think what you can do is use these scenarios not just for building the insights, but also then using as a post-validation mechanism, if you like. So what you're doing is testing what you've learned, replaying it, and then making sure that you fine-tune it before you take it to market. So I would say simplicity is key, just to recap. Making sure that you then run it back by those customers or friends of. I think the importance of friends of is quite important within a business. And then take that back and then roll it across all of your different platforms. Now, as we know in marketing, what you might say on one platform may be differentiated between a digital platform versus something that you might actually have in real life. But there's an essence of what you're trying to say here, and that needs to continue through across your platforms. So when we're talking about brand, I think what's important from a brand perspective is a brand should be truly delivering on the values of your business. But what it should also do is make sure that it's relevant to customers now. So any company that say that they don't change their brand story over time, I think they're a very strong company to be able to do that, or they keep it very simple and then build on sub-messaging within that. So I would say that what you would do is you would ensure that what you're learning, you adapt it and incorporate it within the messaging that you're taking, and it also then sits within your overall brand messaging overall. Your brand messaging can be stories, they don't have to be small strap lines. So as long as you build that narrative through your content over a period of time, it will start to resonate, be touched more often, and then it will start to be subconsciously taken in and understood about your brand and create that affinity that you want to drive within your customer base, which will obviously have an impact on loyalty over time.
Now, you brought up something very important there. You started talking about the content that was being created. In your mind, how important is the content in a B2B ABM sales environment, the content that is created? On a scale of 1 to 10, it's not important at all. 10, actually, the content is vital to the overall growth and sustainability of the company. Where would you put that on the scale of 1 to 10?
Content is very high. It's very high. If you think about how people are going to know about what your brand or what you are doing, they'll only know through the news and the content that you are purveying to them. And it doesn't matter what type of content, but it needs to resonate across all of the different platforms that you're using. So I would say content is king here. It's something that as marketeers, we know that, well, in some organizations, they do it very well. Some organizations, they need to do it better. We're all learning and adapting all the time. But what we do have to do is consider that when we talked a little bit earlier about AI, when thinking about AI and machine learning, we're creating content all the time through these platforms. And that is great. But the challenge we're going to have is that the AI and the learning needs to be updated as we update and understand our customers ourselves. Because what we will then do is if we don't do that, we'll become too vanilla and become irrelevant. And that goes back to your point of differentiation. So these learnings, these understanding of our customers, every time we're changing and updating, we'll always have a core brand message throughout. But those certain points that we're getting from the customers to make sure it is relevant and we're driving that demand, driving that interest and making sure that it's relevant, the content has to deliver that. So content is king, absolutely. But make sure these nuggets that we have from understanding our customers, our direct customer nugget is built into that content, and it should then drive the roadmap, whether it's short term, medium term.
We've talked about so much here that I want to give you an opportunity to give us your single most important takeaway. Like if there's one thing that we need to take away from this podcast today, what would that be?
I would say customers are complex. Customers are really complex. They change all the time. But my biggest driving force to my mantra is don't expect perfection. Understand, keep focused, keep improving within the boundaries of your legal requirements, but adapt and improve. So that's not one story, but it's a premise and a mantra that I think it's important to follow. Continue to change, but don't expect perfection.
I love it. And if people had additional questions, Claire, would it be appropriate if we gave out, say, a link to your LinkedIn profile that they could reach out to you?
Love to. I'd love to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing. And I have to tell you, my takeaway is I think it's brilliant having research that goes throughout that 12 to 24-month cycle of introducing customers, defining the problems, all the way through their purchase and how it changed and impacted them and their businesses is phenomenal. And both the kind of data science, the behind it, as well as just the focus on the one-on-one conversations. That was my takeaway from today. So thank you. I appreciate all of your insights.
You're welcome, Steve. Thank you very much.